Hello and welcome to our podcast. This is Scaling Up. This is a podcast that gets under the skin of business growth, strategy, and people. My name is Michelle Hollewyn. I am a HR consultant and leadership coach, and I'm the founder of Holla HR.
Thanks, Michelle. Yeah, I'm Jarrod Cairns. I'm a business consultant for ETS Business Services. And today we're going to tackle the question around growth and asking business owners what is your real plan for the next 3 to 5 years? Is your plan to grow? Is it to try and maintain current levels? Or even are you looking to, maybe sell the business off in 5 years' time, 3 to 5 years' time?
Yeah, and I think it's conversations that you and I have had many times, Jarrod, that wherever you are on that spectrum, whether or not you are looking to remain the same, grow, or sell eventually, you need a people strategy that supports the direction that you choose. Otherwise, you might get kind of held up at that point when you're looking to do whatever you're trying to do with the business, and it can hold you back.
Yeah, it's very important. Yeah, and looking at strategy, particularly where business owners are saying they want to kind of stay still. I think sometimes they think that's okay. You don't need a strategy around it. But if you look at the three areas, growth, obviously, if you grow in the business and scaling your revenue, then quite likely your headcount is probably going to change, or you might need different people in different roles. And so, as you said, Michelle, that people strategy then is really important to be able to kind of plan for that and plan for the future. Um, and as I mentioned then around sort of sustaining where you're at and stabilizing your business, keeping your margins healthy. Maybe there's a downturn in a particular industry that you need to weather. You still need a strategy around that, and your people need to be ready for it. And the other side we talked about was, if you're looking to exit the business in a period of time, it's having a plan in place to be able to do that. You don't just wake up today and think, right, we're going to sell the business. You need to plan for that. There needs to be a strategy. And again, people need to be involved in that. And each one of them also, demands a different mindset. And so it's important that, that mindset challenge is sort of placed with the business owners as well.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think if we start with growth, then, if you're serious about scaling in the next few years, the people strategy has to go from reactive to proactive. That means real workforce planning. We've all seen those small businesses that started by employing brother, cousin, sister, auntie, but actually real workforce planning, understanding what roles need to look like, and then aligning your culture to that is really what's going to get you from that, sort of strength to strength. And maybe your 2 million turnover business doesn't work with the same headcount and workforce. You then need to start thinking, if we want to get to 10 million turnover, what people, what roles, what structure do we need in place to get us there? And that's not a criticism, but that's the reality of growing your business.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, from a business planning angle as well, the growth or whatever your strategy in place changes your infrastructure somewhere along the way. So as you said, then, if you're growing from 2 million to 5 million to 10 million, you're going to need different systems, different processes, and that people plan centers around that. Again, you and I always talk about, having a people first approach to our strategy and development. It's people, processes, systems, and data. And if you're growing from a small business into a medium-sized business, then perhaps you're going to need to put middle management in for the first time. And as you said, if you've been employing your sister's next door neighbours, auntie's uncle, then maybe they're not the right people to take you forward. Maybe you need to bring people in, and that needs a strategy to think, okay, when I get from 2 million to 3 million, what do we need to do then before I get to 4 million, 5 million? What does that look like from a people point of view? The processes in place to support that. Do you have the right systems in place that can support that growth as well? Um, and as you mentioned then, how does that tie into your HR approach then? What are your KPIs set? Again, we've talked quite a bit about, that disparity in KPI setting, that your business owner is charging off in this direction, following his dreams. And actually the KPIs at the coal face end are totally different, and they're driving a different directive. And so having your KPIs in place that flow, through the business, and you're all chasing the same dream is really important. And recruiting for future roles as well. Maybe when you get to 5 years' time, you might need, I don't know, a head of service delivery at that point. You might need a logistics manager because you're shipping more goods. So it's planning now in terms of, okay, when we get to that point, what roles are we going to need? And then, as you said, Michelle, then he's then actually planning that recruitment strategy around it. And what succession plan look like as well? What if people leave? What if people don't like the plan you put in place and they leave? What's that succession plan? Or if you're promoting somebody, who's going to fill their role? So all those things, in terms of setting the strategy and looking at the people is really important.
Yeah, definitely. It's that old phrase, isn't it? The best laid plans. I think if you know where you want to get to, you almost have to have that as your end game and then work backwards, like you say, Jarrod, putting all those things in place. Brill. So that's, I
Yeah.
guess, a little bit to cover the growth. What about if you want to maintain stability then?
Yeah, it's a really interesting one, that, because quite often when you talk to particularly small businesses, they don't always want to grow massively. This hockey stick growth that you hear about and people's ambitions of massively growing the business. It's not for everybody, because when you grow a business explosively, quite often that involves a lot of extra costs. If you've got a small premises, you might need a bigger premises. There's a cost and there's a logistics exercise involved in that. You may need more people. So actually, business owners think, actually, I'm happy where I am. But we talked about a stat that I'd heard, didn't we? That someone said that with the rise in national insurance and the rise in national minimum wages, the rising cost of services and logistics, all these things, and the cost of bringing goods in and shipping goods, just to stay still in a business, you have to grow at around about 12%. So
Mhm.
actually staying still requires a strategy, because otherwise you're gonna find yourself actually in decline rather than in sort of maintenance or growth. And so I think it's important for business owners to recognise that a strategy needs to be put in place to maintain that level, or just to grow a little bit. Actually means you have to grow quite a lot. Um, and so from that point of view, and maintaining your margins as well is really important in a environment where everything's changing, all the costs are going up. Maintaining your margins is a tricky task. And so again, a strategy needs to be put in place for that. And have you got the right people who can drive those strategies for you?
Yeah, definitely. Completely agree. I think it's deceptive, isn't it? People say we just want to stay the same, but actually that doesn't mean you can stay the same to achieve the same output. So, if
Yeah.
you're talking about profit, that doesn't mean that staying the same is doing exactly the same things you always did. Certainly from a people perspective as well, you need to engage people. You need to be really clear on what's coming down the line, and also think about those individuals and what that means for them in their career, because ultimately to engage people, you need to offer them something. It's not just money that drives people to come to work. They also need to feel valued, feel like they're getting their boxes ticked, in the sense of, do I feel fulfilled? Do I feel like I've done a good day's work? So I think being really clear with people about what your direction is for the organization, and making sure that they feel aligned to that, is crucial. And also making sure that the structure, we've talked about structure and leadership teams, but your leaders need to be equipped to have some tough conversations, have those conversations about career and growth and progression with individuals, and also model the right behaviors. So I think it's really important that as an organization, even if you want to maintain the status quo, you need some real strong values. You need to make sure that people are aligned to those values, that they are connected to the purpose of the business, that they can see where the business is going, even if that is maintaining a level in the market. It still ultimately needs to have a direction of travel that people can get on
Hmm.
board with and engage with. Um, and I think, also when we talk about the market, look externally as well. What are your peers doing? I wrote a blog yesterday
Yeah.
and I said something like, imitation is the best form of flattery. If your peer groups, in the market are changing their structures, doing things differently, there's a reason for that. So do that, kind of market research and that data. So even if you're not adding to headcount, what should be happening from a people perspective that puts you in a great position in the market? And also, as you said there, I think you mentioned succession planning earlier, Jarrod. Even if we are, not necessarily looking to increase headcount or grow the team or recruit, you will naturally have churn. You'll naturally have that turnover. People do leave, opportunities come up. And it's how we equip people to, kind of be ready for those next roles, internally in the organization, and also retain people who've got that knowledge, especially if you are a small business. You'll know as well as me, and I said it earlier, people recruit people who are friends, family, etc. at the beginning, But the reality is they've been on that journey with you. So there's a lot of um, kind of strong knowledge within the organization. And I think it's how you retain that knowledge or how you pass that knowledge on in the right way so that even if, you don't increase headcount, as roles change, as people move around, you can retain some of that in the organization. And again, people still feel connected to your purpose.
Yeah, definitely. And I think the other thing within that as well, when we're talking about changing roles, is just changing landscapes as well. You may have employed somebody, I don't know, to do a particular process in the business, and with the evolution of AI and systems and changes, maybe you don't need those people doing that process anymore. That can be automated, and look at how you can drive your business more efficiently, which then increases your margins and makes you growth without actually having to increase sales or increase headcount. There's different ways of managing that growth or that maintenance level that we talked about.
Yeah.
So yeah, embracing people around new technologies and new systems again is really important, and upskilling them, giving them the opportunities to be able to change the way that they work.
Yeah, and that's a really good point, Jarrod, because if you think about maintaining that status quo as a business owner, you might just purely be thinking about profit. Um,
Mm.
but you're right, there's automation. Unfortunately, sometimes that does actually lead to headcount reductions. So, if you were saying we're maintaining the status quo from a profit margin perspective, but we might lose some individuals. There's also a way that we do that. From an employment law perspective, there is a clear process to follow. We want to respect individuals and also have to consider that survivor syndrome as well. So, the people who stay in the business. So, if we do end up exiting people through reason of redundancy, it's then how do we still engage the people that are left? How do we get them to see that, it was the right decision for the business? It doesn't always feel nice individually. I know I've been through it. I'm sure other people have been through it. It's not a nice thing to actually feel like, oh, I'm the one who's kind of going and, my role is no longer here. So there's a respectful way we need to do that to be able to, kind of drive the kind of the business itself and ultimately still see those profit margins and support the individuals that stay within the organization as well.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. So what about if you're planning to sell the business then?
Yeah, I think if you're planning to sell, and we've used a timescale of 5 years earlier, and that just seems to be the magic number. I guess it's that people side, isn't it? It's if you know what 5 years' time looks like, and that is a potential exit strategy, then the people side absolutely is crucial. It often gets overlooked, and when we get to a point of exit, people are scrambling around saying, actually, what does our people kind of provision look like? That is part of it. If you are looking to exit your organization and sell it, your people resource becomes part of that due diligence process. They are as important as balancing the books elsewhere and looking at what assets and profit margins, etc. you've got, whatever the product is or service that you provide. You've also got the people resource that goes with it. So it's making sure that where you want to be in 5 years maximizes those opportunities to get the right amount of money for the sale, and culturally it's the right thing to kind of sell the people resource along with the business, and it's done in the right way. So again, as I said earlier, it's that working backwards from that 5 year point really.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, it's a really good point because having gone through a business that sold, the I guess the stress levels that go with it as well is equipping people for that due diligence process that comes
Yeah.
alongside selling a business. It's we talked earlier on in the podcast, didn't we, about almost the sort of mental stability and equipping people to deal with what's coming for the future as well. Because as you've just said, then buyers don't just look at the financials when they're buying a business. Obviously they want to see the profitability of the business, they want to see the future potential of the business. But they're also looking at that stability, as you said, and what does the people look like? What is the retention risk? And as an owner, does that business run without you? So once you get your buyout or your earn out and you leave, is that business a viable business? And if it hasn't got the people strategy in place and things like succession planning and retention risks and the due diligence around that, then actually it's not a very attractive business. So I think it's really important to have that people structure in place. And then that alongside your clean and documented processes. Again, we talked about your processes, your systems, and your data. Are you using all those things efficiently that makes your business attractive? That when a big buyer comes in, they don't have to start plugging in new systems and processes and things. They might want to do that anyway, but if they don't have to do that from day one, it becomes a much more attractive business, and it gives you more bargaining power then when you're negotiating the price of the sale, that they don't have to put too much effort in when they bought it. You've got everything in place, and so it gives you a bit more negotiation power in that as
Yeah.
well.
Yeah, definitely. And I think there's two strands to the people side. There's the legal aspect, as in, when we are looking to sell a business as a going concern, we a lovely little acronym that, kind of we hear a lot is TUPE. So individuals that transfer with that business that's being sold, they are, covered by the TUPE regulations, which is the transfer of undertakings and protection of employment rights. So those individuals, their employment terms are protected, or certainly they should be under the terms of the sale. Sometimes incoming employers propose measures and try and consult out of certain terms, but I guess it's that side. So it's making sure that legally your contracts are sound, that you've got people sat on the right terms and conditions. If you offer enhanced benefits, you need them still to be attractive from a sale perspective. So you don't want to give people 50 days holiday a year, but at the same time, you need to think about your individuals now. What's an attractive term for them? Is it having enhanced holiday packages? Is it enhanced sick pay? Is it something that, you give them that maybe isn't consistent with the market, in which place is, in which case is it now to try and address some of those concerns. So you've got that legal aspect, and you, again, as we said earlier, if you are looking to sell your organisation as a going concern, you have to declare all this employee liability information up front, so that any interested parties can kind of understand that, and understand the people costs as well as any other costs that are associated with the organisation. And then there's the cultural side as well. So as you've quite rightly said, Jarrod, it's not just making sure that kind of the legal aspects are in place, but it's that culture. So, making sure that we have got a management structure that are equipped, that are educated, that understand, how to manage, that understand leadership, really clear in terms of their behaviors, what's expected, policies and frameworks that support that. So, if you do have kind of appraisal processes or things in place that, ultimately tell a story, and make sure that you've got I guess, a documented history of how individuals have been in their roles, performed in their roles, concerns have been addressed, they've been rewarded where there's been some sign of successes. I think all of that from a cultural perspective is really important as well. And as you quite rightly said, most larger organizations, certainly that are looking to buy maybe a smaller organization, don't really want to do an awful lot with it. If they can just absorb it into their world, they will do. So if you've already got a really strong culture, and individuals are really bought into your purpose, and they understand your product, your service, what you're going to market with, and they align to the values of the organization, you would hope that being bought by a larger organization but retaining that identity is a real positive for your people and your culture as
Yeah.
well. So I think it's not just making sure that it's a profitable business, but it's also, kind of sale ready. And as I've said before, it's working backwards from that 5-year point, making sure that actually where you want to be defines, what you're doing now.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely right. Yeah. But I think as we sort of move to the end of the podcast then, I think it's important to look at what the common threads were that we've talked about. And we've talked about a lot of things in there, but no matter which of the three paths we've talked about on, whether you're looking to grow, whether you're looking to sustain where you're at, or whether you're looking at that exit planning, the things that stand out is around that people plan. People, have you got clear roles in place now? And have you got clear roles in place in terms of what that future progression looks like? And you've got accountable leadership, is your management structure in place? And do you have a strategic view as people as an asset? It's not just a cost. And as we talked about then quite a lot in that the exit planning, and you gave a great overview there, Michelle, as in terms of looking at people as a strategic asset that you sell alongside the business. And are those people good people in the right roles, doing the right things efficiently with a plan in place for, if they leave or if they move up into a management role. So yeah, whichever path you're on, that strategy is so important around people particularly.
And at the end of the day, it's the people, isn't it, that are kind of the business. So that culture piece it has to be intentional. I don't think you can be accidental with how that comes about. And part of that is, making sure that you invest in people, that they understand that, while yes, you're there to do a job and you are there to deliver a product, a service, whatever that might be, you're also an integral part of that organization. So if that's investing in development, if that's investing in someone's kind of career ideals, progression, making sure you've got the right policies around flexible working to support people both in and outside of work, I think that goes a long way to kind of have that culture that ultimately will take you on that journey. And I think around that there's a communication piece as well, so that's not just a kind of one moment in time where there's comms around this stuff. It's all the time how you can make sure that your leadership teams are engaged, that they're sharing messages, that their behaviors and their messaging approach is all aligned to the wider organizational culture. I think that really really kind of goes a long way to demonstrate where you are as a business and takes people on that journey.
Yeah, definitely. Because ultimately, you can have the best strategies in the world, the best processes, the best systems, the richest data, but your strategy is only as strong as the people who are delivering it.
100%, I agree. Fab. Oh, well, thank you so much, Jarrod. I've loved chatting about that today. I guess it's just for us to say, whether you are looking to grow, maintain, or sell the business. I think the key takeaway from me is that you can't afford to leave your people strategy as an afterthought. It really has to be that working backwards piece. So if you want to do one of those things, and I guess you have to do one, even if it's maintenance, it's always factoring in that people strategy and integrating that into the wider business strategy.
Definitely, yeah. Thanks, Michelle. It's been great chatting about this. So thanks everyone for joining us on Scaling Up. And if today's episode did spark something, if there's any questions or any thoughts that it's provoked in you, then by all means get in touch with Michelle or myself, and we'll be more than happy to do a follow up.
Definitely. Yeah. Let us know what you're interested in. I'm sure Jarrod and I can talk about it for hours. Thanks,
Definitely.
Jarrod.
Yeah.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks,
My name's
Michelle.
Michelle Hollewyn.
Well, I'm Jarrod Cairns. Take care.
Thanks all.